Why does the Netherlands have a housing crisis? There are reports of the huge housing crisis in this small country in Western Europe. Dwellers in its major cities are complaining that it's not an easy task to find affordable housing. There have been a series of campaigns for more affordable houses and demonstrations to change the raging ugly tide of homelessness. An example of this was a recent demonstration by dozens of people on this matter. The protesters carried with them a petition calling for affordable housing, obtaining 102,621 signatures on the petition they submitted to Hugo de Jonge, Minister of the Interior and Kingdom Relations and Minister of Housing and Spatial Planning. But why does the Netherlands have a housing crisis? That's the theme of this video. Is there really a crisis? Before we go into the discussion about the reason for the crisis, will it not be good to establish the fact if indeed there's a housing crisis in the country? Does the Netherlands really have a housing crisis? If it does, how severe is the challenge? Particularly over the past 5 to 10 years, for people who want to own their first Dutch home, the housing market in the Netherlands has become a nightmare. It has been estimated that by the year 2030, the Dutch government will have to build 917,000 homes to meet the Dutch housing demands. By this time, the country's population will have grown to about 18.8 million. This should give you an idea, no matter how vague, about issues they have on their hands in the housing sector of the country. The housing shortage impacts social housing. While working-class families appear to be given some priority, single individuals have a tough time getting a roof over their heads. Besides, homelessness is on the rise here. We can see students struggle to find affordable housing. Now that we've seen that the housing crisis is real in this land, let's now discuss the question, why does the Netherlands have a housing crisis? Rising prices of house. The first and the most obvious one is rising house prices. This isn't peculiar to the Netherlands, it's just that it affects different countries with different severity. With rising house prices here, buyers are unable or hesitant to invest in housing. The first-time buyers find it even more difficult to enter the market. The average home costs €434,000, which is more than 10 times the modal income. Between 2015 and 2021, the increase in the average household disposable income was 25%, while house prices skyrocketed by 63%. By the peak of the Netherlands' housing boom in 2022, houses in hotspots had seen a more than 130% increase since the end of 2013. While the problem is nationwide, major cities are particularly under pressure. Of course, you know that Amsterdam leads the way on this. You can also examine the struggles to affordably house the residents of Groningen, The Hague, Rotterdam and Utrecht. Almost 60% of Dutch homes are owner-occupied. In the big cities in the liberalised sector, rents have spiralled. Unlike with social housing or owner-occupied homes, there's no government help. Thus, when there's a high cost of housing, there'll be a housing crisis in such a country. This is because even if there are enough homes, their unaffordability will still leave many people without places to lay their heads. But still, why are the prices of houses that high in the country? That question leads to the other reason there's a housing shortage in the Netherlands. Building permits and the nitrogen crisis. It's a nightmare these days to get a building permit in the country. There's one particularly noteworthy reason for that among others. It's the Dutch nitrogen crisis. Is that strange to you in any way? The question is, what connection does the housing crisis have with the nitrogen crisis? That may come from those who knew a little about the construction industry in the Netherlands. For years now, the country has been dealing with too many nitrates in the air, but it came to a head in 2019. During the year, farmers brought their tractors to the streets to protest several times. Construction workers also took to the streets to show their grievances. There were times during the autumn and winter of 2019 when The Hague was filled with tractors almost on a weekly basis. But what was the protest all about? They were protesting against the new nitrogen regulations, namely the PFAS standard that the Dutch government imposed to deal with the untenable and unacceptable high levels of nitrogen being emitted. Not less than 18,000 building projects had to be delayed as they had been in contravention of the EU law on nitrogen emission. This didn't go down well with the construction industry, as the operators were particularly fingered as breaching the law, according to Reuters. While this is good for the environment, it's a terrible development for a country in desperate need of more housing. Yes, the protesting construction workers had some success. Those regulations were eventually rolled back. Yet it still takes 2 years from the time of granting a permit to the time a house will be ready to be occupied. So the country has continued to grapple with the effects of these regulations. Lack of free space. We gain nothing reiterating what's obvious. The Netherlands is small, covering a total area of 41,543 square kilometres. While we all agree on this, we also need to understand that it's densely populated considering its population of less than 18 million. Though it is the 67th most populous country, it's the 134th largest country by area. Considering the rather high population and the relatively small land area, the population density in this country is 532 Dutch to a square kilometre, making it the 16th most densely populated country. The population surge in the Netherlands is due to natural population growth and immigration. What do all these figures show you? Wait, we have some more facts about its size. All we've said is, aside from the fact that some 18.41% of its total area has been occupied by water, not fit for construction and agriculture, the country naturally makes very economical use of its land. Remember, or be informed if you never knew, that the Netherlands is the world's second biggest exporter of food produce, just after the US. So up to 53% of its total area is used as agricultural space. Add to that the occasional nature reserve, which is, by the way, under threat also because of the nitrogen crisis. What are you left with to build? Not very much space at all, you'll agree. That means building permits will naturally be hard to come by. It is not easy to strike a delicate balance on the use of land. While it is vital to protect nature reserves and produce food, it is extremely crucial to build more houses to tame the biting housing crisis. Yes, nature reserves provide sanctuary for wildlife that has been evicted from cities in this highly urbanized country. They also provide value to people, giving them places to relax and exercise. What's the point of building new houses in a land that isn't livable otherwise? Still, people using those parks need places to retire at night. The role of investors and tourism in the crisis. While the attention is on construction and land use, we cannot afford to overlook the role of investors in the country's housing crisis. The Netherlands has failed to deal decisively, fairly and effectively with property investors. The Land Registry, in collaboration with the University of Amsterdam, conducted a study that exposed this. It showed that in areas where investors have bought more than 20% of the properties offered for sale, they were able to manipulate the market and hence the price. They eventually paid less per property than first-time buyers or ordinary people. Tourism or over-tourism is insidiously playing its part in the crisis. The rising popularity of Airbnb has created artificial housing shortages or worsened already existing shortages. You see, homeowners and others are attracted by the easy money available from tourists. They simply convert properties into Airbnbs, thereby leaving the locals short on places to live. This sharp practice by investors and homeowners is more common in big cities like Amsterdam, Eindhoven, Groningen, The Hague, Rotterdam and Utrecht. The Dutch government has been raising this particular challenge, especially since July 2020, when it implemented an outright ban on Airbnb rentals in certain districts. Also, you now need a permit to rent out your property as a holiday rental anywhere in the country, and this can be allowed for a maximum of 30 days in a year. Now that we've analysed the question, why does the Netherlands have a housing crisis? The next question is, what is the way of the crisis? Please, let's have your suggestion. Thank you for watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell.